Everybody, they waited to the last possible moments of the afternoon to release these tapes, but they did release the tapes. Sorry it took me so long. I had to listen to them and, do what I do. So here are the highlights. Basically, this is a recording of Mr. Wernick, former clerk of the Privy Council, and Jody Wilson-Raybould, former Attorney General, talking about the DPA, Deferred Prosecution Agreement, for SNC. And, well, I think this is a fishing expedition. I think Mr. Wernick's job was to find out if Jody Wilson-Raybould was going to play ball after all of this. And he, at the beginning of the conversation, he kind of half-heartedly tries to convince her that jobs, and you should do it for the people. And we're going to, if you feel improper about any of this, we'll cover you. Don't worry, you won't feel improper. But this whole thing was to threaten her, and the veiled threats you can hear, there's 3 of them. He says the Prime Minister's very firm about this. He's going to get it done one way or the other. We're going to remove you from this position if you don't play ball, basically. And it's interesting to listen to. You should listen to the whole thing because it's absolutely worth it. But that said, here's the highlights. Here we go. This is at the beginning of the conversation. The time indexes are all here. I've got my notes in the description. You can check, and link is in the description as well. Here we go.
Because I think he feels the government has to have done everything it can before we lose 9,000 jobs in a signature Canadian firm.
Right. So, I'm confident in where I'm at, and my views on SNC and the DPA haven't changed. This is a constitutional principle of prosecutorial independence that, Michael, I have to say, including this conversation, previous conversations that I've had with the Prime Minister and many other people around it, it's entirely inappropriate, and it is political interference. And the Prime Minister obviously can talk to whomever he wants, but what I am trying to do is to protect him. I can have a conversation.
So I wanted to set it up. This is early in the call, okay? And the beginning of the call is Miss Wilson-Raybould returning Mr. Wernick's phone calls. She's calling him, and he picks up on the first ring or whatever. And so that's the setup in the first minute and a half or 2 minutes or whatever, are kind of pleasantries. And Wernick gets right into it, saying the Prime Minister wants to make sure every legal tool is being utilized. Why isn't the DPA being utilized? Miss Wilson-Raybould answers that multiple times in multiple locations, but I wanted you to hear that right early in the phone call, she tells him this is entirely inappropriate. This is political interference. I've told you this, and I'm telling you again. So this is right at the beginning. She tells him this is interference. Okay, I'm going to line up the next clip. Hold on. Okay, here's Miss Wilson-Raybould explaining we gave them these tools, but they had the right to choose to use them, and they chose to not use them. Here we go.
Peter, are their decisions. We gave her and them the tools, the additional tools. I made it very clear at the cabinet table and in other places that these tools are the discretion of the prosecutor, and everybody agreed to that. And there was no guarantee that there would be a DPA in this or any other case. So we were treading on dangerous ground here. So I'm going to issue my stern warning because I can't act in a manner, and the prosecution can't act in a manner that is not objective, that isn't independent. I can't act in a partisan way, and it can't be politically motivated. All of this screams of that. So I'm actually uncomfortable having this conversation, but I'm happy to talk to you.
So again, she is laying out why this is bad. She's saying we in the Attorney General's office, we in the prosecution's office, the public prosecutor, we all cannot be partisan. We cannot be seen to be carrying water for the governing party. It doesn't work that way. The the Attorney General and the public prosecutor, especially the way this specific tool was structured, don't have that power. We cannot appear partisan. It has to be nonpartisan. And I'm not comfortable having this conversation with you, but I'm happy to talk with you, right? I want to solve this problem, but the way this conversation is going, in light of what I've said before, is not good, says Miss Wilson-Raybould. So that's interesting to note. So this is the beginning of the conversation. So I'll get the next clip lined up right now. Hold on. Okay, here's another 1 minute of Miss Wilson-Raybould expressing her concern, not about herself or her reputation. She mentions what it would do to her reputation if she were to follow through with what the Liberal government is asking her to do, and that's grant SNC a deferred prosecution agreement, a DPA. She says it would make me a mockery, but that's not the problem. The problem is how it would look for the government. So this is 1 minute of Miss Wilson-Raybould speaking again with Mr. Wernick.
The jobs and wanting to save jobs. I mean, we all want to do that. This goes far beyond saving jobs. This is about the integrity of the Prime Minister and interference. There's no way that anybody would interpret this other than interference if I was to step in. It doesn't matter how I would look in doing that. I mean, I'd be a mockery. And that's not the problem. The bigger problem is what it would look like down the road for the government. It's not about jobs, and I know the jobs are important, so I don't want anybody to misinterpret that I don't care about those jobs. This is about the integrity of the government and recognizing that there is the ability to issue a directive under the Act. It is still, irrespective of the ability that I have to do that. One, it's never been done before. But two, this is going to look like nothing but political interference by the Prime Minister, by you, by everybody else that's been involved in this, politically pressuring me to do this.
Right. And that's exactly what it looks like. Right? Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead now to the first threat from Mr. Wernick. Hold on. Okay, here we are at 9:07, and this is the second time Miss Wilson-Raybould says that she's uncomfortable with how this conversation is, with how appropriate this conversation is. And then she says very clearly, I don't believe it's appropriate to use the tools in this case that are being referenced at 9:07. I don't believe it's appropriate. And then she is told by Mr. Wernick that the Prime Minister is very worried. I'm worried about this. The Prime Minister's not worried. The Prime Minister's in a very firm mood. I'm worried about this. She says, worried about what? Or maybe that's ahead. I'm not sure. Anyway, here we go.
Comfortable and about the appropriateness of this conversation.
Okay, I understand that, but I think his view is he's not asking you to do anything appropriate or to interfere. He's asking you to use all of the tools that you lawfully have at your disposal.
I know I have a tool under the Prosecution Act that I can use. I do not believe it is appropriate to use it in this case.
Okay, all right. Then that's clear. He's in a very firm mood about this. So,
does he understand the gravity of what this potentially could mean? This is not just about saving jobs. This is about interfering with one of our fundamental institutions. This is like breaching a constitutional principle of prosecutorial independence.
And with that, again, she continually is underlining the seriousness of this conversation. I feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable multiple times. And it is not like she hasn't said this before. This is the last conversation before she's shuffled out of cabinet. They've been working on her for months, and she's been saying no, no. Elder Marquess and his inner circle at the time, the chief of staff, Mr. Butts, the principal secretary, Elder, another secretary, or another advisor, all putting coordinated pressure onto Miss Wilson-Raybould, so much so that she felt she needed to record this conversation. So that's telling. That's saying a whole lot about trust and rule of law, because she's not believing that the rule of law is going to be upheld. She thinks at this point in time that she's the only one who's maintaining the rule of law within this SNC case anyway. So I'm going to cue up the next clip. Hold on. Okay, so this is the last push before Mr. Wernick changes tactics and changes to, well, I'm going to just tell you how it's going to happen now, basically, because you're not willing to play ball. But this is the last push where he realizes that she's not going to play ball. She's not going to budge on this. She's not changing on this. And because he says, you still have things you can do that are still lawful. And she says it's not about the legality of it. It's about the interpretation of it. It's about how it looks, because how it looks matters. Because if it looks like I'm partisan, then it's going to come crashing down anyway. It's not going to matter what we do. So anyway, here they are.
Past each other. I think the way he sees it and the advice he's getting is that you still have things that you can do that are not interference and are still very much lawful. So
it's not that they're not lawful. The perception and what will happen is it will be deemed political interference from day one, when people were talking about why are we entering into or putting a DPA regime in place. Everybody knows it was because of SNC. Whether that's true or not, that's what people think.
Whether it's a tool used in lots of other countries, though, for these kinds of purposes, and especially if there's been a change of ownership or management of the company that's being prosecuted. I mean, it is a public policy tool.
Fair, but
I just want to point out, like, this is the last worst argument you can make. Other countries use it, right? And she's like, yeah, but, well, and I'll let her say the but. Yeah, but.
In our MCs all the way up, and in the law that we changed, we gave the Director of Public Prosecutions the discretion to enter into the DPAs and a judge to oversee the regime. There is no guarantee in any particular case, this one or the ones that will come, that they'll enter into the DPAs or think it's appropriate to do so.
So yeah, but the public prosecutor who has said no DPA for SNC gets the final say. So what are we talking about, basically? And so now he abandons the tactic of trying to convince her that it's okay to let SNC off the hook because it's just fine. Other countries do it. Why can't we do it? Everybody does it. Everybody's doing it. It's a great public policy tool, right? So I'll cue up the next clip. Hold on. So here is a little bit of dead air that I'm going to let you hear. I think it's interesting. I used to negotiate union contracts, and my mom also used to negotiate union contracts, and she used to tell me when she got home, when you want to jump in and speak, hold your tongue a little bit. If you're quiet, the more uncomfortable person will start talking. And if you leave the silence for a little bit of time, somebody will break it, and what they say is interesting. And so Miss Wilson-Raybould is using this strategy. She does it a lot during the phone call. She'll let dead air hang. Wernick will finish something and expect a response, and she won't say anything. It's dead air. And so he's uncomfortable. He wants a response, so he responds and starts talking. This is the last bit of the phone call and the most important part. So we're going to listen to probably about maybe another minute and 20 seconds of Mr. Wernick and Miss Wilson-Raybould. But it's very interesting, the games that are being played, even just like in this conversation alone, right? Because everybody knows how high the stakes are. Everybody knows there are other people relying on the outcome of this conversation, right? They're waiting to hear, they want to know, and this wasn't the result they wanted. Justin Trudeau didn't want to hear this was a failure. He wanted it to be done, right? He doesn't want another bump in the road. He's got lots of bumps in the road. So anyway, I just find the use of these tactics interesting, and I just try and point them out. So I hope that's all right. Here we go.
Thank you. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to report back on, I think, before he leaves. He's in a pretty firm frame of mind about this, though, so I'm a bit worried.
A bit worried about what?
Well, it's not a good idea for the Prime Minister and his Attorney General to be at loggerheads. Well,
I feel that I'm giving him my best advice. And if he doesn't accept that advice, then it's his prerogative to do what he wants. But I am trying to protect the Prime Minister from political interference, or perceived or otherwise.
Well, I understand that, but he doesn't have the power to do what he wants. All the tools are in your hands, so.
Okay, so then, I'm having like thoughts of like the Saturday night massacre here, Michael, like, to be honest with you. And
So Mr. Wernick said there, he doesn't have the power to do what he wants. All the tools are in your hands. So, and Miss Wilson-Raybould said, I'm having thoughts of the Saturday Night Massacre here, Michael. I don't like being in this place. And that was the same reference that she used during her testimony. And here's the Wikipedia reference of it. It's the Saturday Night Massacre is the name popularly applied to the series of events that took place in the United States on the evening of Saturday, October 20th, 1973, during the Watergate scandal. U.S. President Richard Nixon ordered Attorney General Elliot Richardson to fire independent special prosecutor Archibald Cox. Richardson refused and resigned effective immediately. Nixon then ordered Deputy Attorney General William Ruckelshaw to fire Cox. Ruckelshaw refused and also resigned. So his government collapsed around him, blah, blah, blah. So interesting reference. So I've just got 2 more clips to show you here. And sorry, the scrubber's really hard to get it right. Like YouTube, I can get it down to the second, but this is kind of, you get 2 or 3 kind of choices in a minute. It's terrible. So we're going to listen to the Saturday Night Massacre quote again, and we're going to listen through till about 15 minutes, 17 seconds, and then I'll show you one more clip.
Okay, so then, I'm having like thoughts of like the Saturday Night Massacre here, Michael, like, to be honest with you. And this is not a great place for me to be in. I don't relish being in this place, but what I am confident of is that I've given the Prime Minister my best advice to protect him and to protect the constitutional principle of prosecutorial independence.
Okay. All right, but I'm worried about a collision then, because he's pretty firm about this. I mean, I just saw him a few hours ago, and this is really important to him. And okay, I don't know. There's not much more we can cover now. Then I understand where you're coming from.
I'll leave it there, and we'll do one more clip. But isn't it interesting to not get what you want and not be used to that? And you can hear that he's frustrated, and there's more that he wants to say, but he's not sure, and so hold on, I'll cue up the last clip. Okay, so here's Miss Wilson-Raybould saying, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I understand how the Prime Minister gets his way, gets what he wants. And, I'm just waiting to hear, basically. Like, I'm waiting to be shuffled out of the cabinet position because I understand he's going to push this through. So go ahead and do it, because you're not going to get me to do it.
There's a number of things on the go right now. So
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, so I'm not under any illusion how the Prime Minister has and gets things that he wants, and I'm just stuck doing the best job that I can.
Okay.
There you go. She's not under any illusion. She understands how the Prime Minister gets things that he wants. Interesting. This is our Attorney General speaking about the leader of our country and being pressured to break the law by the inner circle of the leadership of our country, including his principal secretary, Mr. Butts, his advisors, top advisors, chief of staff, and clerk of the Privy Council, Mr. Wernick. Coordinated pressure. And then when she didn't play ball, they fired her. Illegal? I don't know. Somebody we want in government? If Mr. Harper had done this, I mean, can you imagine? Beyond the pale. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. I'm sure that some other pundits will have some better analysis, but man, I'm just interested to see what happens next. I think that next, Mr. Trudeau has to respond. The response is sending the vote to caucus to say, do we want to keep them in caucus or not? Them being Dr. Philpott and Miss Wilson-Raybould. And I don't know. I don't know. And politically, it's not very good. Although I've seen liberals saying they're destroying the liberal brand. They're giving the leadership of the country to Andrew Scheer. How can they do this? And it's very, man, the political climate in Canada right now is so fraught. But man, it's interesting to watch. Well, again, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.